Central Texas doctors tell us today there's a lot of pressure to make sure their patients are pain-free after basic surgeries.
So much that places like Baylor Scott & White Health have designed specific training and systems to red flag doctors who are overprescribing painkillers, especially some of the most powerful.
Opioid prescriptions are fueling an epidemic across the country. The CDC says prescriptions are behind 40% of all opioid overdose deaths. In 2016, more than 46 people died every day from overdoses involving prescription opioids. In 2014, almost 2 million Americans abused or were dependent on them. Now KXAN viewers are telling our Arzo Dosed it's not just adults.
Sometimes it's starting with your child's pediatrician.
Tumbling requires great balance and control.
She's aware mentally and very in tune to her body.
Gymnastics is this 12-year-old's life. She's no stranger to injury and the pain that follows.
She's my health nut.
So her parents were surprised when she was prescribed all this medication. We agreed not to reveal their identities to protect the child's privacy.
I really absolutely am not happy with the possibility of my daughter becoming addicted to an opioid.
In October, their daughter had her tonsils and adenoids removed. It's a pretty common problem which pediatricians come across daily.
Can you say ah? Good job.
And it's a very common surgery, but it's what happened after that worries these parents.
It's more than 2 cups and it poured out the top.
This is how much hydrocodone with acetaminophen their daughter was prescribed.
And there's still some in each bottle.
They say they never received warnings the drug could be addictive.
It's ridiculous. It's actually crazy. Why would anybody give a 12-year-old that much medicine?
What's even more concerning, the parents say just 3 days after taking this medication, their middle schooler preferred it.
And she'd say, I need some pain medication. And I said, okay, we'll get you some Tylenol. She says, well, that works better.
We only gave it to her every other dose for a couple of days, and then we said, you know, this is a narcotic. We need to back off on it.
Do you think it was careless to prescribe that much medication?
Yes, but I do want to give a caveat. I just think it's standard procedure.
Doesn't mean that they wanted the child to have 3 cups. That just means that they wrote a prescription for a long period of time, hoping that they wouldn't have to hear from the parent again, ever, because that's a bother.
Dr. Ray Brown is the chair of the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Children die every year because of having been given opioids after tonsillectomies. To the extent that the American Academy of Pediatrics has come out strongly against the use of one specific drug, codeine, which is especially toxic in a group of children.
The state says in 2016, of Texas students in grades 7 to 12, 13% misused some kind of opioid. The majority of those cases, codeine cough syrup.
Why isn't there better tracking when it comes to deaths and prescriptions?
That's a great question. And one of the things the committee we're going to look at is from the top down, the pharmaceutical manufacturer, what role do they play? The drug wholesaler, the prescribing physician.
As a 14-year-old, State Representative Kevin Roberts got his first job delivering prescriptions for a drugstore where he grew up. Now, he's part of a House committee scheduled to meet for the first time next month, trying to tackle the opioid epidemic and craft legislation for the next session.
And we're going to talk about prescribing patterns. We're going to talk about how can drug wholesalers better monitor inventory. How can a pharmacy benefit management company help with the number of day supply that goes to individuals? So on the front end, we can help prevent, hopefully, that addiction.
And what the Food and Drug Administration is now doing could help by increasing warning requirements on prescriptions with codeine. Before, the agency said the drug should not be used for any reason, even coughing, in children 12 and younger. Now, it's anyone 18 and younger.
How much of the dosage did she end up taking?
I would say 10%, maybe a little more than 10%, maybe 15%.
These parents wean their gymnast off the drug and say they want to be part of the voice for change.
I'm all for pain medication when you need it, but there's a time and a place, and making it become overused is just not setting the example we need to set for our kids, and it's not taking us in the direction that we need to reduce this kind of a problem.
Remember, that little girl was taking hydrocodone with acetaminophen, a combo that makes Vicodin. That's one of the most common prescribed opioids for children. Others that are common, Percocet and codeine. A lot of these are now flavored to taste better, but doctors say parents should not make it sound like their children are taking candy. That's going to give them a false sense of the severity of the drug.
And Arzo, we understand no one is really tracking when children are overprescribed in Texas.
Yes, Robert, it's up to parents to ask questions before a child is prescribed any medicine. What are the risks for children on this medication? How much is being prescribed? And why is this the best drug for my child?
Good advice. Thanks, Arzo.
The medical community is doing some soul searching right now. Painkillers are very helpful and when utilized appropriately. But if they are unchecked, unmonitored, and used without mindfulness, you get addiction.
This week, Travis County filed a lawsuit against prescription opioid manufacturers and marketers. The county accuses defendants of fraud that caused addiction, crime, and death. We've learned nearly half of all opioid overdose deaths in the U.S. involve prescription medicine, high-power painkillers like codeine, hydrocodone, and oxycodone.
And KXAN investigator Arzo Dost found there are new efforts underway to keep those drugs from ever being wrongfully prescribed here in Texas.
So are pharmacies over dispensing?
There are some that are.
But the Texas State Board of Pharmacy says they're just dispensing what's prescribed. And in the past year, the number of opioids prescribed statewide was 17.1 million.
And so if the doctor's over-prescribing those opioids or controlled substances, then the pharmacist should, contact the prescriber and possibly even determine not to dispense that medication if it's not appropriate.
That's the board's goal with the Texas Prescription Monitoring Program. It requires all pharmacies to report controlled substances, like opioids, within 24 hours of dispensing them. In fall 2019, pharmacists and prescribing doctors will also be required to look that information up in the system, too.
So they're able to determine if the patient is getting too much of the medication, from other places, from other prescribers. They can determine if they should maybe not dispense that.
The board stresses this must be a joint effort between pharmacists and doctors if it's going to work. That's why the board is also working to train doctors on how to use the prescription monitoring program. One problem, though, the program's records only go back 3 years, so the database won't include older opioid prescriptions, but they say this is certainly a step forward.
Well, what else is happening at the state level?
Well, Robert, there is a team of UT researchers spending the next 2 years studying why doctors aren't already using the system and trying to understand how to get more of them on board.